This video, I'm going to be going over the best offense in Madden 25, and I do think this is going to be one of the better ones in Madden 26. Also, going to be talking just about like why it is such a good offense, and then we're going to be talking a little bit about defense. Defense is probably going to change a little bit in Madden 26, I think, at least if college football is any indication. And getting in these regs streets, I actually think this is like the most fun way to play Madden 25 right now, just because the abilities are kind of crazy in Ultimate Team, and yeah, so I'm gonna be rocking a little dollar, kind of see how that goes. Dollar is good. I don't know that dollar is going to be great next year. We're going to have to see, but they did kind of nerf some of the pressures of dollar. And yeah, I mean, we're used to this. CFB, you drop a lot of picks. But I want to thank you guys for subscribing or being members or just watching the video. Obviously, started this channel in response to my main channel getting hacked. And so this has kind of been a little bit of a endeavor for me, and just something that I think is, I don't know, like taught me a lot about myself, and wanted to get on and just do a basic video here, just talking about kind of maybe the, I don't know, what I want to do going forward, and then also some of the meta and all that. So I think one of the things that you don't really see a lot in Madden or college football content anymore is actually something that I love. It's something that when I find this kind of content, I devour it. It's like the content that I just love to consume, and it's like it's pretty straightforward in terms of what it is. It's basically like, I don't know, it's not like scheme content, though I like scheme content. It's more like how to manage the game, or like situational awareness, tips and tricks. Game. I don't know. Again, I don't know how else to explain it other than just like game management. And the game management piece is something that I'm kind of getting into. Right? It's like clock management down the stretch, or one of the other things, which is what I wanted to talk a little bit about on offense, is just a systematic approach to offense, and we're going to be talking a little bit about that here. So, like on offense, for example, I think one of the things that I've noticed about myself and a lot of people that I've taught Madden to, we tend to like overcomplicate the game, and we don't really have to. And I was thinking about this today. If you think about it, like, what's the quickest way to get better at Madden? What's the quickest way to get better at college football? What's the quickest way to get right? What's the quickest way to get better? The quickest way to get better is truly to replicate what pro players are doing, or learn what they're doing, learn why they're doing it, try to figure out how you can do the same thing that they're doing as just a starting point. Again, just a starting point. That is like part A. And that part is honestly the easy part. Like, it's pretty easy, in my opinion, to kind of figure out, at least maybe in this stage, like what people are doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it, like why it's good. Why it's good is probably the hardest part to figure out. But like, it's not necessarily too hard. Like, you can see the plays, you can study the film, like you can figure out what's going on. But I think the harder part is maybe even like the most important part, which is playing as much as humanly possible. And I think within that, I'm actually going to talk about Mike Leach, because I think that's kind of a cool little deal that he used to do with his teams. Probably, again, I'm one of the biggest Mike Leach fans like ever. I love the way he saw the game, and I relate a lot of stuff that I teach in Madden to that. And again, one of the things that's kind of interesting in Madden, or in like real NFL, real coaching, is there's these coaching trees, and you have these coaching trees, and you're kind of brought up under, like, they'll say like a Hal Mummy disciple, or an Air Raid disciple, or he's a Bill Walsh disciple. Like, you're brought up in these coaching trees, and you kind of, those coaching trees typically give you a glimpse into like the philosophy of that kind of coach. And so, anyways, I think for in Madden, it's kind of similar. Like, who did you learn Madden from? Oftentimes, it's going to inform how you play Madden, because even if you don't know you're doing it, you're going to some degree replicate what your teachers are teaching you to do. But I think what's really interesting is when you consider the understanding what pro players do. It's Pro players do get a lot of flack for running the same play over and over and over again. And I wouldn't necessarily say that they necessarily run like the same play. They'll run three, four, five variations of the same play, but compared to like a real NFL team, they definitely don't have like a massive scheme. They're pretty simple, and the play. Here's the other big part: when you watch some of the best players in the world play, they are pretty simple, and the reads are what are the most simple thing in the world. They're making they're making quick reads, they're making quick decisions, and they have to typically do that under pressure because that's what the defense is going to be doing. And so what happens is you kind of get forced into a way of playing the game that is pretty rep dependent, which is, I think, why it is so important to minimize the number of plays you have or the number of setups you have so that you can maximize repeating those plays and then figuring out. And I love this. This was something that was I heard a long time ago. This guy was talking about why he runs a 4-2-5 as opposed to a 3-3-5 defense. And this was in he was a defensive coordinator, and he said the main reason I run a 4-2-5 is because I know it's what I know, it's what I know how to fix. And I think that's such a valuable thing. Like the value of like sticking with a scheme and solving problems within the scheme is super cool, especially if it's one of the better schemes in the game. For example, like we know in Madden 25 that dollar is at least a top three defense in the game. Like we know that it is a competitive defense that has been ran at the highest of levels to win thousands of dollars. Like we know that. And so I think what happens is oftentimes when it doesn't work for us like it worked for them, like when we can't just like when we don't automatically become fancy overnight, we typically dismiss some of the strategies that they actually use, and we honestly dismiss what I think is the hard work of the repetition of the game, and kind of seeing the game through that, learning not only like how to run your defense, but what are the problems that are caused and how do you solve those problems within your defense. So learning the counters and the counters to the counters and the counters to the counters to the counters is something that I want to spend more time doing and more time talking about. I think it's kind of one of those things where I just realized like that to me is something that's like super valuable, and I don't hear a ton of people talking about it. And also within that, like the clock management aspect of the game, the end of half scenarios. Another big one that I think is super important, but you really don't hear people talk about is the red zone. The red zone is the most important thing in on offense and defense because if you can score inside the five, it is so daggone important for your your overall scheme to be able to score inside the five. And then just vice versa, if you're able to get stopped consistently down here inside the five, it really does change. It just changes everything, man. It changes the course of the game, and so red zone is super important as he falls in for a touchdown. But it's things like stopping the run consistently. Another like super little thing that I think is always interesting. But if you this applies to Maddens for like literally 10, 15 years, right? This was a principle that I learned in Madden 13, and this was the make it look the same principle, meaning you want your six-man pressure to look just like your maximum coverage, to look just like your man blitz, to look just like your zone coverage, to look just like your run defense. Like as much as humanly possible, you want every single defense to look identical. And what you're doing, and this is actually something that you're starting to see in the real NFL, is you're forcing the opponent to live in a post snap world as opposed to have the answers to the test before the ball is snapped. Super valuable, super valuable principle. All right, so I'm gonna go normal wild close here and talk a little bit about like money plays. One of the other things that is like something that's a little different now is the whole idea of a money play. I feel like a money play, back when I first started doing YouTube, was like a true money play was something that was borderline unstoppable. Like, and it normally was just because either it was a user catch, a route, like you were just, it was just a very powerful play that was like I said, borderline unstoppable. Now, a money play is still like hard to stop, but it's more so like a play that has answers for every coverage, and that is really what a money play is. And if you think about it, in a perfect world, you would definitely have answers for every coverage, regardless if you knew that they were in cover two, cover three, cover four. So I think one of the things that happens a lot, and this is where again, just kind of one of those things that separates, like oftentimes people call plays to beat specific coverages as opposed to calling plays that beat every single coverage but might be better against a specific type of coverage. So while it's a slight nuance, it's I'm not calling for verticals to beat cover two, but it's like I'm calling for verticals because this one route can beat cover two, but then I can put a comeback and a running back in route that can high low a cover three, cover four, and then I got a tight end crosser that can beat man coverage, and then maybe I have like a drag route or something on the field. So see what I'm saying? Like you're building plays offensively that can withstand really any coverage that you face. I think that is super super important when developing an offense, and really something that you see kind of at the highest level. Another thing that you see at the highest level, which I actually did a really bad job of that there, and you've heard a lot of competitive players talk about it. They'll talk about defense, and they're like, defense is switch stick, and I think like that's a little bit of an oversimplification, but it's not actually crazy overly simplified. And the way that you improve your switch stick is by definition like a skill gap they put into the game. It's a read and react. For example, another read and react skill gap in the game is the ability to consistently make the right read offensively. Like that is a skill that is not only going to be learned, but it's going to have to be cultivated, developed. Like you're going to have to actually, I don't know, for lack of a better word, there we go, that's decent. You're going to have to actually like you're gonna have to put the work in, put the reps in. You're gonna have to put the reps in, and it kind of goes back to that big principle we were talking about in the beginning, where there's knowledge and then there's application of knowledge. So like acquisition of knowledge is time where you're watching these videos or you're spending time learning an ebook. Which, by the way, speaking of ebooks, I actually am doing something really really cool right now. I launched a free school community, and I'm not putting necessarily ebooks in there, but I'm putting like good like knowledge tips, exclusive tips in there. And then I do have a paid community where I have all my ebooks. Now it's the only difference is the free community is obviously free to you. The paid community is only $10, so it's not like it's outrageously expensive, and it gives you an entire library of all of the ebooks that I put together over the years. So if you want to sign up for either one of those, they will be linked in the description down below. But again, you have kind of two things. You have the application of knowledge, and then you have the acquisition of knowledge. So the acquisition of knowledge is when you watch something and you learn kind of the ins and outs of it, right? It's a tutorial, it's a ebook, it's a guide to walk through, whatever you want to call it. However, or in addition to that, then there is the application of knowledge, which is where you obviously take that information onto the field. And when you take that information onto the field, then you are able to, kind of see, do you actually know, the thing that you think that you know? Like, do you actually have it? That is the application of knowledge. And the way that you improve that application of knowledge is through repetition, like through consistent practice or deliberate practice, as some people have called it. That is the best way, in my opinion, to continue to improve that knowledge type deal. That's we're going to try to force something because we're winning, but should have just ultimately taken my three there. Actually, should have called a timeout sooner on that drive. So you have the acquisition of knowledge, which is when you're reading a book, taking notes, film study when you're watching somebody play and trying to understand what they're doing, why they're doing it. which can take a specific, it could take some time to get there, but it doesn't take, there's like a defined, what's really important here is it's a defined start and end time. So like, for example, you click on this video and it's going to give you a start time and an end time. It's going to tell you about how long you're going to be spending acquiring knowledge. That is, if you, of course, you watch the video all the way through. Which, if you're still watching, thank you for doing that. But then there's the application of knowledge, and the application of knowledge never really ends. There's not really there is a clear start time, of course, like when you start, but there's really not like a time where you're like, I've arrived. There's always ways to get better. Even the best players in the world consistently misreads, call bad plays, execute poorly, right? Like I said, make bad reads, bad decisions. And then also, they give up stuff that they probably shouldn't give up. So, anyways, all that to say, what's really important is because there's no clear defined end time, what oftentimes happens is people try to shortcut the reps as opposed to, kind of maybe overdoing it at times. I don't know if there's really a way in which you can over rep a game, because what reps allow you to do, reps are like the, what's the word, like the biggest commodity you have is repetition, because the more time you spend in acquisition, the less time you're going to spend in application. The more time you spend trying to learn the playbook, the less time you're going to be able to spend like learning how to execute the playbook, if you will. As I almost throw a pick. These zones are like super baity what he's doing. I think it's a match coverage. See what I'm saying though? So if I know that the quickest way to get better is through identifying what the best players in the world do, and then doing that and playing as much as I possibly can play, then I know pretty quickly, like if you really watch what the best players in the world do, again, they don't call things. What the best players in the world do on offense is they'll call a pretty finite amount of concepts. So like they'll be like a concept to beat man, a concept to beat zone, a concept to attack one spot of the field, right? And there is typically, like a set amount of those, like maybe 5 to 10 concepts every year that are like really, really, really good. And so there's a kind of a clear cut thing of concepts. But what happens is what they do is they will apply those 5 to 10 concepts to 3 to 5 formations within maybe a couple variations per formation. And that right there is kind of how you can watch a top level Madden player play. And while you will think they're running the same play every play, they're actually, playing a little bit more. They're actually doing some things that you might not be aware of. One of the things that Mike Leach is famous for is having like a kind of clearly defined finite number of plays. And what he does with that is he has that clearly defined finite number of plays. But what he does that's really smart, or what he would do that was really smart, is if somebody wanted to add in a new play, then they would need to basically tell Mike, what play are we going to remove so that we can add your new whatever play it is. And inevitably, what that little exercise did is they started to, or they basically didn't add a lot of plays because they didn't have like a really clear cut, this is why this is better than this. And so obviously they just wouldn't add a ton of plays. Again, the biggest commodity that you have is your repetition time. And so what's really important, the more that I kind of study this game, that I'm finding something that I don't really like to do, because it's fun to be creative and expand on your scheme and try new things. And you need to do that. You need to throw a lot of stuff at the wall and kind of see what sticks. But at some point, you have to do the hard work of the repetition. In fact, Hal Mummy, he was talking about the air raid offense one time, and he said one of the reasons why we're good is because we have a great capacity for boredom. Actually, one of my old coaches, he used to tell me that Cody, water will cut a rock, but it will cut a rock because it's hitting the rock in the same spot, drip after drip after drip, and that is kind of how water has the capability to cut through a stone, basically. And when you really apply that concept to Madden, what you'll find is the thing that is the hardest thing, in my opinion, is to master the repetition, right? Once you have a clearly defined scheme, which we try to provide through our ebooks and tips and strategies and breakdowns and all of that stuff, at that point it becomes up to you. If you really want to take your game to the next level, you have to put in the work of the repetition. I don't think you necessarily have to play the game 24 hours a day, although that would be nice, but you have to play the game enough, and you have to stop adding your little twist to things. That's something that, again, it sounds like, it sounds kind of harsh, but the reality is, so many people, they have plays that they don't really need, and they don't really master the plays that they definitely need. So what happens is you'll get a play down, and you'll get the play down, and then you'll have it down like pretty good, but you won't have it like mastered. And then you'll kind of get bored with it. So you'll move on to the next play. And so then you've kind of stunted your execution ability of that play. And then you add another play in. And the more you do that over and over again, what basically happens, hopefully I don't miss this kick. I don't know how to kick on this with this new meter. But what basically happens is you kind of become average at everything as opposed to mastering, like a finite number of things. And in a Madden game, there's only like 30 plays on both sides of the ball. There's only like 60 to 80 plays total in a Madden game. So you don't really need like a ton of plays. You need really high level, high capacity plays that have answers against every single defense, man to man, zone, match. Those are the kind of plays that you should spend your time repping. I think in general, it's kind of a culture, a tendency to try to substitute good for great. So if you have something that's great, for example, like this disengage or this engage blitz is objectively like great. Like it's one of the best blitzes I've ever seen. You're sitting three people and it's hard to block. um, while you have something like that, that's for, like I said, like great. Oftentimes you'll trade great for good because in the name of uniqueness or creativity. And so, that's something that I'm definitely guilty of. And there's obviously a balance. You don't want to necessarily, obviously, Madden at the end of the day is a video game. You play the game to have fun, and that is what it is. But oftentimes, the meta and being good at what the best players are doing is going to inform any kind of off meta scheme anyway. And so, it's important to really learn the ins and outs of like, what is your plan? What is your scheme? What are your reads? What are you looking for? What are your problems? How do you solve those problems? Like those are all things that you have to have, in my opinion, if you're going to get any level of like consistency and performance. Because at the end of the day, like while we want to like, say Madden is RNG and year in and year out, they make the game a little bit more casual friendly, and some of that's true. There's a reason that the same, handful of Madden pros are at the top of the charts in college football right now. They're at the top. They'll be at the top of the charts when Madden drops. There might be a couple of people that kind of jump up and join, but in general, they're not. In general, really, the thing that oftentimes holds people back is just the lack of repetition. And if you're someone that's trying to get really serious about your game, you need a good scheme and you need a lot of repetition. That is, to me, super important because the more repetition you have, the more likely you're going to know how to fix whatever those problems are when they arise. So I think that's just like super important. And I want to thank you for watching this video. If you're looking to take your game to the next level, join our school community in the description down below.